All right, we're live. What is up, everybody? And welcome to another episode of the Survivor Buffs. It is time to podcast. I'm here with Adam and Peridiam, and I am looking forward to this one because we're talking about people that are in second place. Some of you guys know I ran cross country in high school and track. I was one of the fastest people in Tennessee. However, I've never won a race in my entire life. I've gotten about 30 silver medals at home, so I know a lot about this. So you guys better be up on your game here.
And hence the name.
Silver Medal Gideon. Yes, that was my nickname in high school.
Is that what they call you?
That's what they called me. Every time I'd walk through the halls, it'd be like, "Hey, Gideon, you ran well for second place."
Nice.
Oh, shut up, Adam. You had gold medal. Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Hey, I came in first place in summer camp Olympics in 8th grade.
You came first place in Survivor Trivia.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's something. Got a plaque on my wall for that one, for sure. So, Peridiam, thanks so much for joining us, for taking the time out. Hopefully this ends up being pretty fun.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the invite, and I'm looking forward to sitting down and ranking all these silver medalists.
Absolutely. So here is what we're looking at. Here's our tier rank. We did pretty much everyone that's came in second place, even the seasons where there were 3 final threes. We only did the person who came in second place. We thought maybe it would take a bit too long if we would include the third place people, and I guess technically it's not runner-up. However, if there was seasons where there was like a tie for second place, like for example in Millennials and Gen X, obviously Hannah and Ken tied because both of them had 0 jury votes. So we included both of them. I think there's maybe 4 seasons on here. There's a person we're not going to mention that we skipped over for Philippines, which was technically a tie for second place, but we're only going to include one of those people. So we have we got 5 tiers. We didn't do F because I mean it's hard to Survivor's so hard to win. It's only a little less hard to come in second place. So anyone that's made it all the way to second place, we wanted to give them their props. We didn't feel right giving them an S tier. Or F tier, although maybe there's some people who you could, I could hear the argument that maybe deserve to be in. Yeah, you guys ready to get going with where it all began, the dawn of the game?
Yeah, let's do it.
Caramon, I'm going to Caramon first.
No.
Kick it off with Borneo with Kelly.
Absolutely. Anyone want to take it first? She's one of the ones I'm undecided on. She's so tough because obviously, same thing with Hatch. It's like I hear the argument for giving Hatch like the S tier because like he came in and like had all these strategies and everything with basically no blueprints. But at the same time, like he did make some like questionable moves and did things that's like any other season that would have like cost him the game. So it's just as tough to grade Hatch's win as it is to grade Kelly's because she came in with no blueprint. So she's a tough one. I could hear, the argument for an A. I can hear an argument for an F. It's a tough one. What are you guys thinking for Wigglesworth?
Go,
what do you think? Okay. Yeah, I agree. Like the strategy wasn't outlined at all. It's hard to differentiate between what is and isn't strategy on some level. It's like, is it even deliberate what she's doing half the time, like intended to win the game versus just existing how Borneo's cast was approaching the season, which was partially like friends, adventure, the experience of it all once in a lifetime versus, 30 seasons deep, it's all strategy and it's just a very different mindset. And with Kelly, there are definitely some questionable calls she makes, flipping away from a majority alliance at some point to help the underdogs. I'm like, it's hard for me to parse through what makes hers is one of the most unique, I think, of all 40, however many are on this. I think there's a couple that I went over this before we hopped on the call and I was trying to mentally like put it all together. And I think there's probably 2 or 3 that I really struggle with, and Kelly is one of them. Strictly because her game is so vastly different from, I think, the rest, from her approach. I would say, ultimately, if I had to stick her somewhere, it's probably in, like, C tier.
Okay.
There's a lot of things I think she just kind of does because she doesn't like these people. And like, if you compare that to what all the other games after, like that doesn't necessarily stack up too well from a strategic point of view if we're ranking them based on strategy or their tactics. So I would say there's somewhere in the middle, trying to figure out what it even means at this point for us, between the three of us. Like, what does a C tier even mean? I think is an interesting thing. And since we have nothing to work with, I would probably just start her somewhere right there.
Would you say C leaning B or C leaning D?
Leaning D.
If you had to pick. Okay.
Okay, I was gonna say B leaning C. So that's interesting.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, she had some questionable moves, but I don't know. The fact that she lost the game because of a number draw, kind of like, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. I can't really put somebody in C for that because it feels like putting Dom in like a A. Like it could have been so easily flipped. Just I don't know. So I feel like B. I don't know.
It's tough because you can make the argument that she lost the game because of her number draw, but she also lost the game because of her kind of turning on Sue. If she hadn't completely turned on Sue, she would have gotten Sue's vote. If she hadn't, there's another jury member that I think didn't vote for her just because Wiglesworth was always kind of like push off to him. I can't remember which guy it was, but you could say she lost the game because of that. So it's like, besides, the number one was the only jury vote she didn't get that I think wasn't directly because of her own gameplay. And like Peridiam said, she did kind of turn on the Majority Alliance and then also kind of went back to them.
Right. And she flips kind of like on her own. She also then flips, like you said, in the Majority at the Final Four to turn on one of her closer allies, which really is clearly results speaking. Like, that was not great. It got Sue super pissed at her, which leads to Sue having a tirade against her. But then the interesting thing is, from what I've heard, is that a couple of the jury votes actually flipped to Kelly after Sue's speech. Like Jervis says, and I think possibly Colleen or whoever. I don't know if Kelly actually had as many votes going in as she ended up getting, partially because of Sue's speech. And I don't know. I've heard that was hard. I've heard Greg's number thing was actually more just a joke. He was going to vote for Richard either way, but I don't know. Maybe not. Also, it's not pre-recorded.
And then we also have the thing with she has is she tied the record for most immunity wins for a woman? Or?
She has a challenge
for a woman. For a woman, she set the record. She said it, and it still in 40 seasons has not been broken. It's been matched, but
only
it's never been
only
broken.
tied by who? Chrissy.
Actually, I don't know about rewards, but if we're just talking about immunity challenges, it's tied by a couple of people. I think
Chrissy Kim
Jim. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's impressive. That's something to consider. Like, even though the challenges were a lot simpler back then, just stand on a beam or something. I don't know. I'm just like, it's tough for me if I'm thinking like strategy wise. Like, I feel like a B, there are so many runner-ups who have pretty strong strategic games that I would just put above Kelly, and I'm just like, all right, I don't know. Although, wait, so it's S, A, B, C, and D. Maybe then in this case, because my thoughts were there was an F tier, so I had
we're not. There's no F here.
There's no F tier, so I would probably say then, I think a B could work. It's sort of just the middle average.
Yeah.
I
think she's the B's of B's.
Yeah, I was going to say either a really high C or a really low B is where I'm at with Kelly. So I don't know. It sounds like it's got to be B or C, but
is there like do we vote the three of us and then the two to one situation?
We should say what we're leaning as well. So I was B leaning C. So I'm okay
C
with
leaning B. I'm the opposite.
Okay.
I would say, I'd probably go C at the end of the day.
Then go C. Yeah, then go C.
All right.
C's good.
C.
That is not one that I will die on a hill for.
Yeah, I don't know. It's slower. Season 1.
Yeah. So going to season 2, Australian Outback. To me, this has got to be me and Gideon were talking before this. I think I had 4, maybe 5 S tiers. To me, this has got to be an S tier. To me, Colby only did one wrong move in the game, and that was taking Tina to the ends, which is what led him to be a runner-up. So to me, he played a flawless game until his very last decision.
I disagree. I don't think he's an S. The reason I don't think he's an S, I think I would put him at an A, if I put him at an S, even if he did lose to Tina and didn't have an awful tribal council, then final tribal, then I wouldn't be pissed. But I mean, when you like Peridiam, when you were ranking awful final tribal councils, go check out that video, guys. By the way, you should have put Colby, because I mean the dude did not. I think he was a shell of himself.
Give yourself 7 days. You might have you might say something else. So next week's video, might have might feature Colby Donaldson.
I'm looking forward to that, because me and my dad have talked about this. It's like when he refused to have a closing statement, that to me was just like him handing the game over to Tina. So I can never put that in an S.
Right. I would agree. Actually, I'm more on Gideon's side here.
Okay.
I am. So it's funny you said that, Gideon, because next week I'm making a video. It's actually already done.
The worst tribals by winners.
By people who could have won had they had maybe a better final tribal council.
Oh, okay.
So like I recently talked about 10 players who really didn't stand a chance. Like Sugar didn't stand a chance to win Gabon. And she bombs it anyway. Like it's not just like you didn't stand a chance. The bar was so low and you still managed to disappoint us. In the case of Colby, the bar actually was pretty high and he could have won. Maybe he could have beaten Tina. Like the fact that he was 4-3 against Tina of all people. Imagine if it was against Keith and he still put up the same final tribal. I mean, he probably wins, but he made the really bad move there to take Tina at the end. Yeah, Colby has a terrible final tribal. I think it's arguably one of the 5 worst from like a results based, just because he could have won and he doesn't give a closing argument. He has some pretty mediocre answers. He praises Tina just as much as he praises himself. And
more.
He says like, I'm not even sure if I am that deserving. And I'm like,
I know.
You said he says his
the
head is in the
biggest palm of all time.
Right. So he says his head is in the game, but then he also doesn't. For me, it's so tough with these early seasons, especially the first 2 when the game is like just forming. And I think Australian Outback is kind of a reaction to Borneo. What ends up happening here is Colby is trying to both be the good guy who doesn't have to play Survivor and then also play Survivor and be the strategist that is sort of looked down upon by what he perceives as the wider viewing audience, the millions of people in their seats who didn't like seeing Richard win. So I think for me, I would honestly lean A to B instead of A to S.
I'm middle of the line A for me. I think he needs to be in an A, Adam. I mean, come on. He is America's sweetheart. He's the Captain America archetype, like, and he's the original challenge beast. Like, give him that. But I will say this. Apart.
Yeah, I did come in. Like I said, I have 5 people that I'm putting in S. But the 5 people, I think there's a borderline one, but of the 4 for sure ones, he's probably the one leaning more towards A for me. So it's a soft S for me. So are you guys thinking more B or A? Because I'm cool with putting. I feel like S is one of the ones that's got to have at least 2 of us saying
I have about 4
A.
S's.
I had 4 to 5 as well, but Colby was not one of them.
No, I would have put him in B, and if you say S and Gideon says A, you guys can go to the A, I think. I'd be more inclined to say A. Yep.
Okay. Cool with me. To me, Kim, I think, is our first D, in my opinion. I feel like she kind of winning the final challenge was probably the only notable thing that I can think of. I mean, it didn't seem like she ever went out of her way. Like she was with the numbers, I guess, but that really wasn't her doing. I think it was just people who were in power positions saw Kim as like, here's a person who's probably doesn't have it in her to backstab, to betray. She's someone who, like, if you're with her, she's just going to kind of roll with what everyone else is saying. And, like I said, winning the final challenge after going through one of probably the most gruesome season for the survivors, and still winning the final travel challenge against Lex, who was okay throughout the season, and then Ethan, who obviously was a professional soccer player, to still win was notable. But besides that, I feel like she would have lost no matter who she brought with her. And for that reason, I feel like that is a clear reason to put her as a D. If no matter who she would have picked, it would have been a guaranteed loss.
She did decide the winner. She did decide the winner. I wish she would have picked Lex.
Yeah.
I like Lex a lot, even though I love Ethan
Me
now.
too.
Now I love him. Now, after I got to know him, I like him a lot. But it's like she did beat Lex. Lex did have the runs, and you forget Ethan was a goalkeeper. He wasn't a striker, so he has no stamina. I was a goalkeeper too. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, D. She would have lost either way. She didn't play a great strategic game like Lex did, or a great social game like Ethan did. So. I'll go with D as well.
I would put her at D as well. I originally had her at D. I had a few people that in my personal, I would have like an F tier usually when I do my tier rankings. So I have a couple people I put an F, but I didn't put Kim in F. I put her at D, so I'm cool with that. Yeah, I mean, there's also like, she does. I will say there's like, she is I think one of the oldest finalists, runner-ups I think in the history of the show, maybe the oldest. So there's something to that, which is kind of cool. She does do a couple of unique, like I pointed out, there's one challenge hack that she puts together with her luxury item. I like that. I think that's thinking outside the box. I give her props.
Yeah.
She gets a little lucky with the Final Four immunity. If you guys know about how Lex and Big Tom.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring that up too. Yeah.
It kind of is like if that didn't happen and Lex manages to win that, Kim doesn't get. He's not in this conversation, and that's kind of like a production's fault, which is very.
You think Lex would have taken out her?
Yeah, they would. It would have been the three guys.
I couldn't remember who they would have taken out. I couldn't remember.
She was on the bottom. They would have. They were gonna go to the three guys to the final three.
Huh. That would have been interesting.
Yeah. I think it probably would have ultimately been a better ending too. Unfortunately, for her.
I mean, yeah.
Man, Alexa
anyway,
in Final Tribal.
I mean,
right.
Lex and Big
or Tom, maybe, who knows?
Yeah, Lex and Big Tom did get second place money, so.
They did, yeah, because of production screwing up. So
yeah,
I'm fine with
Crazy. Yeah. Okay. So we got Survivor Marquesas. I always pronounce her name wrong. Is it Neleh? Nila?
It's Neleh.
Neleh. Okay.
Yep.
She's a tough one for me as well, because she was part of such an important moment in Survivor that nowadays. That sort of strategy of kind of like being the underdogs, banding together to get the to become the new majority alliance seems so commonplace now, but at the time it was, this groundbreaking part of the show's strategic evolution. The question is, was she just a passenger for that, or did she have a say in spearheading it? What do you guys think about Neleh?
Yeah. So, oh man. She's somebody that, so I've been looking into her Final Tribal as well as somebody who possibly blew a lead when she could have owned it and been the winner. Yeah. And so again, this is another case of like, it's early days in Survivor history, but like when she says, I didn't start playing Survivor until day 24, and I'm like,
why?
Where you been? The edge of extinction? Like, what's going on?
Exactly.
It's like but she's trying to frame it from a perspective of the jury who were bitter and mad at her for flipping. So she's like, once I flipped on you guys is when I started playing, and I'm like, but she's like, but then everything leading up to that, I wasn't playing, but I was real, and then I became fake, and I flipped on you guys. And she's like, I kind of wish I hadn't. She doesn't own it, and that's why John Carroll doesn't vote for her. He goes up to the voting booth and he says, I'm voting for V because Neleh just doesn't own her flip. And I think, to me, if I'm trying to get to the bottom of like who gets the most credit for probably the most notorious, well-known flip in the history of the show, at least one of the biggest ones at the beginning, I don't know of how much credit I really do give to Neleh based on all of her, what she has to say beyond the flip. It just feels like she was a passenger, which makes me not feel good about putting her very high on a tier list of strategic game when it's hard for me to she barely gives herself credit for the strategic game. So I don't know if I should be either. I personally had her pretty dang low. I would probably put her in D, but I could see people wanting to put her higher for the iconic flip that she did, which to be fair, she did have to do that. She did have to vote, which was very different at the time in Survivor where flips don't really happen. So there's that.
Yeah. Right. I had her as a D as well. I mean, Adam, me and him have argued hours and hours about how much I hate the season, and she's one of the reasons I not only did she not own her game at the final tribal, but like, don't get me wrong, both Vecepia and Aaliyah were both very, like preachy, like, oh, I, played this game with like religious reverence and things like that. But at least Vecepia owned her game, It's like Neleh didn't do that all. She was just like, I'm a cool little church girl and I didn't hurt a fly. Like, shut up. So yeah, I think she's
also, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but John Carroll has mentioned it. Did you know that this is a rumor, I don't know if it's real, speaking of conspiracies and whatnot.
Check out that video today as well.
Yeah, apparently the final tribal of Marquesas was so boring that they actually had to reshoot it. And
I believe it.
This is from John Carroll. This isn't like this is from John Carroll himself. He said that the producers were so like not satisfied with the answers and the back and forth that's why you like occasionally, if you notice, like Kathy is very like out of it, and like Dawn, she's just like, I don't care when she goes up to give her question. I don't know if I guess I could believe it because it seems to come from a primary source of John who was there. But yeah, that's like the rumor.
I believe it, and I think Marquesas is a boring season. So,
it's really boring. I think it's one of the least interesting final tribals. Just speaking about that part of the season, it's really boring. Yeah. It's like one of my least favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hated
it.
Partially because of Neleh.
Yeah. All right. So you guys both said D for Neleh. I would have probably said either a high D or an extremely low C. If we did have an F, I don't think I would have put her in F. I think I would have kept her D if we did have an F. So I'm cool. I'm cool with her being D. I think that's a good fit for how we kind of have it structured here.
All right, here we go. We got an S coming up. Let's go.
So moving on to Clay in Thailand. He's interesting because on first glance, you could say, he's a GOAT, that he's like a strong D, but like at the same time, it's crazy because so many Survivor diehards who, rewatch seasons, the diehard fans, they consider Heidek's win to be one of the best wins of a first-time player ever. And Clay was only one vote away from beating him. So that's got to say, does that say more about Clay, or does that say more about how Brian pushed people's
with all due respect,
with
all due respect, Adam, I think it says more about Brian's lack of jury management than Clay. Like, don't get me wrong, Clay's a nice guy. We've interviewed him; he's awesome. But like, come on. I mean, he didn't play. There was not a lot of strategy. He didn't really control votes. His final tribal, he was the same Clay that he had been the whole time. And even with the crap he was saying, how he still mustered how many votes? 3? How he still mustered to only lose by 1 is insane to me. Like, Brian must have said some terrible stuff off camera that we didn't even see because, like, he
might have.
I believe that because, like, how do you only win by 1 to that? I think
the final tribal. I think between Clay and Brian is an interesting one because it almost feels like it's 7 anti-votes for each person. Like the people voting for Brian didn't want to see Clay win, and the people voting for Clay didn't want to see Brian win.
Yeah,
and it's a unique case sometimes. I don't know. Just like
Helen, it's just a dark end to a dark season.
I feel like for me, Clay, I personally would put him at the bottom as well. I had him in my D tier, not F, but he's at the bottom in this case because I just don't know I don't see what he did that he was just with Brian almost the entire time, and all he did was like, Brian wasn't, I don't know, like Brian gets a lot of credit for securing the 4 votes, but it's also like, he kind of builds up Clay as this demon and this bad guy, and maybe to some extent people just the 4 people who didn't vote for Clay didn't like Clay, didn't want to vote for Clay, they never were. I do think there's some agency for Brian there building up his GOAT, and there's a lot of rumors behind the scenes about what Brian has said that both was against Clay's character and also partially if you rewatch Final Tribe, you'll listen to what Ken has to say, reading between the lines. There's a lot going on. I just don't think Clay is a strong strategic player whatsoever. But I don't know. It's hard for me to see an argument for him to be. What did you have him at C? Is that what you were saying?
I had him at D.
I did too. Is he the first GOAT?
think so. I think
No.
Keith might have been the first goat.
Oh yeah,
Keith
Keith
Fami.
was first goat.
Unless
Yeah.
you're not talking like if they're in the final tribal. I don't know.
That's what I was talking about. Like, because usually goats are in the final tribal. Like, isn't he technically the first goat?
Right, which is partially why like Colby was like, "What do you do? You didn't take the goat. You took like the strategic."
Yeah, because I mean, technically, he was the first goat, but he didn't get taken to the end. So is he?
I mean, he's sort of billed as a goat. I don't know if he would beat. I don't know what the winning prospects are for like Jan. I don't think I've ever. I've considered a lot of things in Survivor. I don't know if I've considered how likely was Jan gonna win. Probably. I don't know if she beats Brian or not. Probably does. I don't know. People didn't really like Brian that much, so. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sounds like we're all thinking D for Clay. So Clay, if you're watching this,
we love you though. We
love
want to
you.
go. We want to have your food sometime.
Yeah. So moving on to it's weird. I looking at this, it makes sense, but it's also kind of weird to see so many runner-ups down. I don't think it's going to be that way towards like the middle, and really past China. There's a lot of ones I think are going to trend more towards the A and B. But I guess
think for me personally, a lot of the early seasons have pretty weak finalists, runners up.
Yeah.
And I just noticed there's a string of D's in this case.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So with the Amazon, we have Matthew Vaughn. Ertfelda? Is that how you say his name?
Yep.
Ertfelda. So he had one vote. I had it up here. Butch was the only person who voted for Matt's. Jenna, who played. I think Jenna's game sometimes doesn't get enough credit. I thought she was one of the better winners, to be honest, of the first 10 seasons. But Matt, I don't know.
Matt
I think
is a weird cat.
Yeah, I think for me. It's got to be another one. I'm debating C or D.
Yeah, I hate just like going D, but I know it's not going to happen later on, so I'm not really getting too pressed about it. But once again, I think this is another D.
Yeah, I pretty much, in my personal thing, I had him at F. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's very good at Survivor. I don't think he had the capacity, at least on that season, to be very good. He was literally, not literally, but basically, figuratively, led on a rope by Rob Sesternino until the very end. He had the understanding that he couldn't beat Rob, but at that point, he couldn't really beat anyone. I don't know what strategic acumen this guy really brought. At least from what we saw in this season, it just seemed really bad. He seemed socially an outcast, and on Survivor, that's kind of a death sentence. As much as you might enjoy him on your screen or the crazy stuff he gets up to, he's from a completely different planet with his machete antics. Like, I like Matt. I find him very interesting. I think he's one of the most unique finalists, runner-ups. But I think as far as strategy goes and tactics, I have him toward the bottom.
Yeah.
I agree.
Lil is another one of the ones that is kind of a toss-up for me because I actually don't think she was a GOAT. I think she made a lot of moves that put her in a swing vote or in a position that a lot of people would come to her, which it's tough to pinpoint what exactly she did to put her in that position. I think her game was so, like, for lack of a better term, just boring, and like what didn't make for good TV that we didn't really get to see why people came to her so often for wanting her votes. I think that getting to the final two, I'm not saying she was like a great player, like a mastermind by any means, but I do think she made some smart decisions and aligned herself with the right people to get her there. The big thing holding her back, though, is, of course, she got voted out, but she also did earn her way back in and took advantage of that. So to me, I personally couldn't put her in a D. To me, it's got to be, I might put her in I think I'm leaning C. With Lil. Also a tough season, a lot of great newbie players this season that she did better than Rupert. She did better than Fair Play, better than Burton, made it past Savage, all these players that she made it past. So I'm seeing C, but what are you guys thinking for Lil?
I 100% agree with C. I can't put her in D because I actually, even though while she was manipulated by Burton and Fair Play for a long time, she did make the move to turn, and I respect that because they were. She was the third, and she wouldn't have gotten to the final two. So yeah, I like her. She did earn her way back to the game. She used the twist to her advantage, even though she was voted out. I respect her a lot more than the other Ds. So it's probably C leaning D.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I put her in D. I know it's literally Neleh, Kim, Neleh, Clay,
All
Matt,
in a row, huh?
and Lil. It's so bad. I was doing this myself on the side, and I was like, "Am I just going? What does it mean to be a D at this point? They're all Ds. Everyone's a D. I need to separate the Ds now." I have her at D. I mean, yes, she did get voted out. That's pretty questionable. And like in a vacuum, I don't know how often Lil wins Survivor. I don't know if she beats Johnny Fairplay or Dara. Certainly not Burton, the person who also got voted out. And I don't know. I don't see a lot of. Maybe if she returns 30, 40 seasons later, she stands a shot. I guess.
What?
I don't know. I don't have a lot to say with Lil.
It's the Boy Scout uniform. It held her back, man.
I mean, once upon a time, I did say she was one of the biggest goats, but I don't know. I was back. I consider like 2017, my channel 2017. Like there's certain eras of knowledge that I've gained over the years, so I don't know if I'll be as harsh on her now. But when it comes to like comparing her, especially to what's coming up, with just starting with Boston Rob and All Stars and going forward, I do think at the end of the day, she falls out the bottom tier for me. So, but we can 100%. Go with C too. I'm fine with whatever the consensus is. There's three of us, so
me and Adam both voted C. So unfortunately, the buffs got you on this one.
There you go.
I will say, even though I'm C,
I think she's low.
I think when we finish this tier rank and look at everyone in the C, and it's like who is the closest to D of the Cs, to me it might end up being Lil. Like I don't want to say that. Obviously, she's up there with Wiglesworth right now. I don't think Wiglesworth is like leagues ahead of a player, but I think Wiglesworth was for sure a better runner-up. But I don't think Wiglesworth is a B, and I don't think Lil is a D personally. So, yeah, sure. But we'll see. Maybe C ends up becoming really stacked.
It's all very subjective. It's all subjective at the end of the day. So I'm cool. I'm not going to split too many hairs with this.
All right.
Yeah.
C is fine.
All right.
Okay. So somewhat of a change of a shift here. We're gonna bump up from our C and D. Our C and D tiers here with Rob. To me, as I said at the beginning, if there was one that I was kind of like super on the fence of S and A, to me it would probably be this one. This is the one I was thinking of. I see your jaw dropping a bit, Gideon. So I'm interested to hear what you're about to say. It's just like it's gonna be the same thing when we get to Russell with Samoa. Is like played such a good strategic game, was better at challenges than Russell, even though he held his own. It's just, man, his jury management just wasn't there, which is such a big, if not the single biggest factor in the game. You know, it's not like some of these players like, I don't know. It's tough for me. It's either S or A. So if you guys both say S, I'm cool with putting them in S.
Is Gideon S for
silver
medals have to do? Okay.
I am S. I think S. He controlled the game the whole time. I mean, no game is perfect, right? But I certainly don't think he deserved to lose. I know you like Amber a lot, Adam, and I understand that. And yeah, she didn't quote unquote invent the meat shield strategy, but I don't know, dude. Usually the meat shield strategy, you take out the meat shield at the final 3 or the final 4. I don't know. I feel like the meat shield should have won here.
Although I think in this case she probably loses to Jenna if she takes Rob out at 3.
Well, yeah. I know.
It's weird.
It's a weird dynamic because of the couple thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Also, in hindsight, it's probably the best thing she could do for her and Rob and the family they have now. So
Of course, very. I mean, Rob. Let's be honest here. Rob gets S just because he had strategy in real life. He's like, I'm gonna marry her and get the money anyways. So
yeah, he screws over all of his friends to sacrifice for his wife. He throws himself in front of the line of fire so his wife can win $1 million.
I mean, at one time,
That's like
at one time, yeah, exactly. At one time, Amber and Rob might have been the most well-known couple in America. You know, their wedding was televised. It was like royalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's definitely going to go S regardless. I will say I probably would agree with Adam's first sentiment, which was...
Well, then put him in A. I'm outnumbered.
I would probably put him in A because knowing how the jury is going to think and feel and consider their votes, and especially when you know these people like outside of the game, it's really poor form to butcher it as bad as it was, to get them to be that angry. Maybe they would be that angry anyway. In that case, I don't know what to say. It's tough. It's a little bit results based, but I think I've always had this thing in the back of my head when I listen to Kathy's final speech in the final tribal, where she says to Rob, there was another path for you to get here to the final two with Amber that you could have taken that would make us all want you to win. And you didn't take it. And that is the S tier Rob that I don't see. I see maybe the A tier Rob, who does a lot and he controls a lot. He's always got the upper hand no matter what. And I kind of feel like he somewhat mismanages the lead. And it ultimately kind of wins anyway. It's like somehow they share the Super Bowl ring. But I don't know, for me. I feel like he's not one of the 4 S tiers I had on my list. But I do have him as a... I think the highest A tier possibly. He's very good. Terrible, really bad final tribal council performance, but other than that,
he might be in your video. I don't know. You know.
Oh yeah, he is. He's in the next video.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. You know, I've been talking crap about people's final tribals. You know, Rob needs to be mentioned. He should have. Yeah, he didn't have a good one. So I'm okay. He's not the most solid S for me. I'll say that.
Okay, but I'm cool with S. Like I understand it. I think it makes.
No, he's not going S. He's going A. So.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you took the words right out of my mouth. It was like, with some people, like with Russell, I can see the argument of like, could he have got as far as he did with who he is as a person, as a player, without playing that way? And it might be no. With Rob, it seemed like he did so many unnecessary steps that put him in worse positions with the jury. And for that reason, it's just personally so hard for me to put him in an S.
I just think there was better ways he could have handled betraying Lex or Kathy or Tom or Alicia. Like he just mercilessly takes him out, and he's kind of a dick through all of it, and that doesn't work in Survivor. Survivor does not usually reward the dick of the group. It just doesn't. You can't be the asshole. You don't. Am I the asshole?
Has it ever?
Yeah, you are. I don't even know if it has rewarded the asshole for winning. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
No, because Russell didn't win. So I don't know.
I mean, it can be effective to get you far for sure, but that's the tricky thing about Survivor.
Depends how you look at Caramoan. If you watch Caramoan as a player, you might not think that way about Cochran. But if you talk to some of the people out there, you might get a different opinion on
interesting.
that guy.
That's interesting.
But he also got every vote, so. We'll see. Stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to Twila with Vanuatu. I have a pretty firm tier placement for Twila, but I want one of you guys to go first, because I might be. It's either going to be exactly what you guys think or like two or three off. So I don't know, Gideon.
I'll say something because I like Vanuatu. Okay.
Yeah, I know you two one of your favorite seasons.
Yeah, Vanuatu's so underrated. Anyways, of course, Chris played a great game, but Twila was a part of that, and Twila did what she had to do to get herself to the final two. If it wasn't for the fact that, one, she did flip, one, she didn't suck up to anybody, because that's just not Twila. She just doesn't suck up to anybody, and she didn't at the end. She definitely had a terrible final tribal, but I don't know, Peridiam. I don't think she would have won anyways. I don't know. You may disagree.
Oh yeah, I was saying she wasn't gonna win in that video.
Yeah. So she wasn't gonna win anyway. So yeah, she was an a-hole. I But I mean, I respect her strategy up until Final Tribal. Other than she lost to Chris, which you can't control, and that was a very hard challenge.
Right.
With the arrow, with the holding the arrow, that's one of my favorite challenges of all time. So, yeah, I say honestly B.
You say B?
B?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I had
Okay.
her in B as well. I like Twila. I've always kind of liked Twila. She's one of the most unique, I think, finalists we've ever seen, and like
Yeah.
she can't be anyone but herself. And I
Yeah.
think it's bad if we're gonna like talk about reasons why she's maybe not higher. It's because like she loses a jury vote to like a majority women's alliance that wanted to reward the woman to win, and there's a woman in the finals and they still
Right.
didn't give it to her, and that was like their MO all season. And I think her tact was kind of out the window. Her swearing on her son meant a lot to a handful of those jurors, and that really rubbed them the wrong way. I
Yeah.
think getting into so many arguments with people over petty things that really probably didn't really matter. You just gotta sometimes suck it up and just apologize. And that wasn't Twila. Like that's unfortunately she never stood a chance against somebody like Chris. I don't know if she stood a chance against Scout either. Maybe she did. I've heard conflicting things, but I've always felt like she had a decent head on her shoulders for when and where to who to gather and when to turn the tide. And her and Scout worked together really well to flip the vote at the right time. And they actually didn't even really need Eliza. If you do the math at the final 7, she could have flipped the vote regardless because the women were all voting for Eliza, and that's a great spot. I like Twila, so yeah, I put her as a B for strategy.
Yeah, and no, I'm agreeing with you guys here. I think she is a good like standard too for like what a B is. Like, there's a couple players here that like I could see Colby lower. I could maybe see the argument for Bossa Rob as an S, but to me, Twila is like the definition of like your middle, maybe a little bit above middle grounds, runner up. Yeah, no, I like her at B. I don't really have anything else to add on that. I think that's the best placement for her. Cool. So that's our first 10. Moving on to Katie.
Did you think we weren't going to be as high on Twila as you?
Yeah, I actually, I guess I thought you guys were either going to say B or maybe throw her down with the with like the CD crowd that we were at before, but yeah, glad we agree on that one. I think that's the first one we've all kind of pretty firmly said.
That wasn't a D. Yeah.
That wasn't like a solid bottom tier. But yeah, what are you guys' thoughts on our Palau runner up here? It's so tough to judge runner ups. For me, the toughest seasons are the ones that had such dominant winners. Like when we get to Sabrina, it's going to be so tough. When we get to like, your obviously like the unanimous votes ones, like Fishbach is going to be so tough. It's the ones where they're paired with someone that just they have no shot against. Because do they have no shot because the winner was so great, or do they have no shot because of their own doing? So this one,
or possibly both in some cases,
or both. Yeah.
I would say, I've recently, so the two seasons I've most recently rewatched in Survivor are Palau and Guatemala. And I was partially inspired to make my video last week, about, it was because of Katie. Like, I saw how bad she did at the final tribal, and I felt like, okay, this is definitely terrible, and there's no shot in hell she's winning. And her performance was just constantly, like, getting worse and worse. It was just a slow decline. And it's like, I kind of agreed with her argument where she says, I kind of played the best with the cards I was dealt. I was dealt an alliance of people who, and I'm like, my main issue with her is that I wonder if she could have chosen to work with the women toward the end of the season. I know she hated Karen. I know she didn't want to work with her. I just wonder, like, could she have beaten her? I was at the final 5. Like, there was a possibility. You could have voted out Tom or Ian. I know for me, I have her I mean, it's probably a D, because I don't know if she really made the best of it. Like, you can't just say, like, everyone else was so much better than me. What was I going to do? Like, you got to be better than that. That's like, you're just rolling over and dying a little bit and just accepting the loss without, and you're like, I guess she was trying to convince the jury that she was in such a hard spot with Ian and Tom. And like, they were so good. How is she ever going to compare? And it's like, well, I mean, look at Tina and Colby. Like Colby's like a Tom in a way. He won all these immunities, and he was the main provider, and he was this like really good looking older guy. I don't know. I'm not older guy, but like I just am like Katie. I don't fully know if your strategic head was there most of the time, and I honestly think you could have taken a better road toward the end of the season and possibly been against a weaker opponent by simply voting out one of those two guys who were controlling everything, and they were so far ahead of everyone else in the cast as far as like odds to win. So I agree. I had trouble. I was like maybe C if I'm being generous, but I would put her in D.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I mean, let's get something straight here. The big storyline was Ian and Tom. You know, like that challenge decided it. So and I hate episodes like that, but it's how it goes. So for that, I'm just like, she made the episode.
It's pretty epic.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to say the episode was boring, but of course, the final trial, I'm just going to be like, okay, come on, let's get to the Tom win. Yeah. Like, please.
Yeah. No shot.
Is this true? Did Katie have no votes against her all game?
Probably. Now that I think about it, she was never in the limelight, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the truth.
But is that her undoing, or was Tom, was Tom protecting?
I mean, I don't even know if getting no votes is necessarily a great thing in some cases. Like, it just shows like maybe you just were never threatening enough that you needed to. And then like, I don't know if Katie ever argues that. Maybe she does at the final tribal, like as a pro. I know Gavin does. We're jumping way ahead to Edge of Extinction, but he's like, I never got voted at all. And I'm like, that's actually kind of commendable, but you have to be able to like sell it and spin it so that it looks good, as opposed to like, again, going far into the future. But like Dean is like, look at all these props I got and all these advantages. And Tommy's kind of like, yeah, but like, what does that really mean? Like, just because you didn't get any votes, maybe nobody wanted to vote you out. I mean, nobody was really interested in voting you out. So you didn't really it doesn't really mean anything. I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
I remember JT mentioning that, right? In the Token Sheen's final travel. And getting no votes. I think he might have been the first person to
that might have been when people started honing in on it.
Yeah. Because Tony mentioned it in Winners of War. But
you guys have her a D as well?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you have your first returning player here in a non all-star season, our first captain, I guess. And Stephenie LaGrossa. I'm trying not to be biased on this one because Guatemala is the first season I watched. So I do have like this. I do have this strong place in my heart for, especially the players that made it far. I do think that in returning seasons, it's always like a coin toss. Like, is it going to be vote out all the returnees, don't let them get far, or is it going to be let's take advantage of their expertise. This season, it's kind of a little bit more blurry to see where that lands. Obviously, in like All Stars, it's tough because everyone's returnee, but you could see that sort of dynamic happen towards the winners in All Stars. So, if there was any of that towards her and Bobby John in Guatemala, obviously she powered past it. It's tough to say if she played a better game than she did in Palau because it's tough to compare games too in all newbie seasons except for Bobby John because it's a very different dynamic. You know, it's different people. You have different power dynamics, different twists. Obviously, the idol was introduced in Guatemala. I don't think Stephenie's a D. To me, the debate is she B or C? That's where I'm at. I think it's got to be one or the two.
I'm in between. I don't know whether to put her in B or C, to be honest. Just because, she played a good game. I mean, for a returning player, the target you have on your back, she did a good job of toning that down, but just wasn't too likable. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Stephenie is a case for me of like somebody who had a lead and was in a great position for a while, and maybe she earned it, and maybe there's a credit to her game that puts her above a D at least. Like you said like you were saying, Adam, how returning players, especially in her case being the first to be mixed with new players, instant target. So I don't know exactly. I rewatched Guatemala just recently. Like I finished it last
Yeah.
week, and I was like, they don't go into a ton of the strategy, uh, so I don't really have a great read on exactly what Stephenie does. But I guess she gets
Right.
into a decent alliance. She proves herself capable enough around camp to not be voted out or targeted. The swap is a huge contributor when Judd flips, and that becomes a tribal lines thing, less like a target Stephenie thing, because she's a returning player. It's more like we need her for a number. She's good at like she builds enough of a trust with her majority alliance, which is a good thing to have. And she's kind of like the ringleader. I know Rafe is probably more the brains, I think, of the two of them, and they both sort of take control of the season. But I kind of feel like if you're in the lead and you're going into the middle or the end of the game, and you have like control, it's like if you go to the end and you get just shut out, which she did, and she probably loses to Rafe. I've heard even she loses to Lydia. I don't know about Cindy. I don't really know much at that point, but I am just like you kind of blow like a kind of like a fourth quarter lead or something. There's something
Right.
to that. Like you willingly let the opponent beat you. Like you are the Falcons in that Super Bowl against the Patriots, right? Like you guys had like one quarter, 15 minutes. Stephenie, you had control of the alliance. You could easily determine the pecking order all you wanted, and you picked off Jamie, you picked off Judd, you picked off these players that you probably stood a good chance to beat, and you were willing to go to the end with two players who you were for sure going to lose to. That
Right.
is questionable to me when it comes to like, in order to win Survivor, you can't do that. That's such a
Yeah.
fundamental thing. Is like understanding how who you're gonna beat and how the social dynamics are playing out. Picking the wrong person to take with you to the end is a game ending. It's game ruining. I think it's the case with her. And I think also she was just kind of annoying sometimes. Like she complained about the food and she didn't get enough food, and she kind of whined a
Hmm.
lot about losing a lot, or whenever she lost, you just didn't hear the end of it. And that
Hmm.
kind of rubbed people the wrong way. So I'm like, is it really that hard to just like not complain? I don't know. So
Yeah.
I would probably put her at C for the control and the ability to get in.
Hmm.
Like she has a decent ability to do so. I also think that her Palau game is pretty similar to her Guatemala game. Her Palau game, she just didn't have the numbers. So you were saying
Hmm.
how like it's hard to grade between the two. I'm like, I kind of feel like Stephenie never changes. Kind of like Twila. She kind of
Yeah.
doesn't really change between the seasons. It's actually the same Stephenie both times. We just now it's Stephenie in power versus Stephenie the underdog.
Even in Heroes and Villains, I didn't really see too much of a
Yeah.
evolution. So, no, I was debating B or C, but I definitely was leaning more towards C. So it sounds like that's kind of the consensus
Yeah.
for Stephanie. If you're cool with
I'd
that,
probably go with C.
yeah. Um, to me, Danielle is a D for Panama. Albeit probably one of the higher Ds, but again, to me, it's like if you make it to final three and if you're a guaranteed to lose no matter who you take to the end, the only thing that maybe gives her that boost up to C is the fact that she came into the final Muni challenge kind of stuck in the middle between, in my opinion, the greatest like challenge rivalry the show's ever seen, two of the best challenge beasts of that sort of like middle or late old school era, and beat them both. Granted, the challenge was just bouncing on a board in the water, and you had two kind of like meaty guys who were super depleted and caloric intake to probably have a good reference of what true balance is. Um, so I would probably put Danielle in D, which feels weird. I do actually think her Heroes and Villains game is underrated. I do think she actually played um, a pretty decent game
Mm-hmm.
in Heroes and Villains, and that even is increased more in talking to some of the Heroes and Villains players who have said that like she didn't get the edit she deserved in that game. But we're only talking about Panama here, so to me it's a D for Danielle, but D for Danielle.
Hmm.
What do you guys think?
I'd probably stick her in C tier. I think she kind of reminds me a
Yeah.
little bit of like not to say she has much control of Steph or anything, but she
Mhm.
kind of goes to the end and picks the wrong allies to take. I think she stands a much better chance against maybe Shane and Courtney. I don't know how that
Right.
works socially, like if she can even get there, but I think it probably would have worked out better than losing to Terry or Aris, no matter what.
Mhm.
I don't have a lot to say about Danielle, to be honest. I don't know. I just had her in my C tier.
Yeah.
Yeah, honest. I mean, yeah, I
Get a
agree because
tiebreaker, Gideon.
she didn't. I go C because I don't
Okay.
think she had a chance of winning, but I think she still played a pretty decent game. I don't have a lot to say about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool with me. To me, Ozzy's a solid S. I mean, I think that Ozzy and Dom probably are the two like locks in my opinion for the S tier people. I think that Ozzy and you, and I'm trying not to talk too loud here because my friend is actually right outside my room watching Cook Islands for the first time.
Oh, really?
So I'm trying not to talk too loud. I got a
How
fan
far is
going
he
here.
into the season? Is he pretty far? Or?
We just saw Cecilia get voted out, so pretty early.
I guess it's a couple episodes in. Yeah, I don't even know when
Yeah.
that is. Okay.
That she was
Cool.
after Billy, so she came in third to last.
Oh, so third episode, fourth episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's on the fifth because I'm assuming he's watched one now.
That's
while
funny.
we've been doing this. So he's 5 in. I'm trying not to talk too loud here. So I'm saying S. I'm not going to say any more because I don't want him to hear
Sure.
me. So you guys roll off that. What are you thinking for Oscar?
I think S as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to deny him that. He's seriously. I don't care what people say about Joe. I don't think I've ever seen somebody dominate challenges so easily. And if it wasn't for the fact that you had another person that was also one of the one of the greatest survivors up to that point, and Yule, then you have a winner. I mean, it's hard not to view the season as a game with two winners because seriously, them top two was just so, and the votes reflected it, just so even. But I mean, in the end, strategy always wins, which I love because that's how it should be. And social game always wins, but still, man, it's that Ozzy's just something different. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's just built different. He was born in the water or something.
I know he's a dolphin.
Yeah,
he's a dolphin.
Yeah, he's insane. I mean, it's tough. I did years ago. I did I looked at the numbers, and it turned out Joe had better numbers statistically than
I know,
Ozzy.
and that's why I said that because I watched that video.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't care.
And I hate when the numbers sometimes go against the grain. I enjoy it when I'm like, I just know people love Ozzy. He's beloved. He's lasted. What is it? The test of time or whatever. He's withstood the test of time. Where he's just one of those iconic, beloved players who just represents a huge part of the show, which is the challenges, and he's so good at them. Joe doesn't. He doesn't have that. Also, Joe doesn't go far ever. He's never gone very far. He always is early merge boot, no matter what. And he doesn't have the strategic game. He doesn't have much of a social game. It's just he's really good. Joe's also very good at challenges and
he doesn't have an OnlyFans.
Yeah, sure. He's not hacking the social media very well. I think he's turned fans against him, if anything. Ozzy's quite beloved. It's still I don't know. For me, Ozzy and Cook Islands, it's he's weird because it's one of the most robbed, I think, performances. And if you're going to talk about robbed players who almost won and maybe even should have won, Ozzy is a case with the final three popping up. I think if it wasn't a final three, you're looking at Ozzy winning the final immunity challenge, probably cutting Yule, although I don't for sure. And then taking Becky and probably beating Becky. I don't know for sure. I don't want to just assume that Becky loses. I know it sounds like a no-brainer, but I've heard people argue in favor of Becky winning somehow, and I'm like, okay, I won't say no, never say never, but it's tough to ignore. In another timeline where they don't introduce the final three here, Ozzy isn't the winner. He probably is just for winning probably 6 immunity challenges and breaking the record because they had one less due to the final three existing instead of having the extra one at the final three. The one thing I have a hiccup with Ozzy is that there's a couple of moments I don't agree with him throwing the challenge to get rid of Billy at the final in episode 2. I don't really love that.
Yeah.
It's a little early in my opinion. Also, he was kind of on the bottom throughout the entire pre-merge. If his tribe I2 didn't win when they had Candace and Jonathan on it before the mutiny, I do think Ozzy is probably the next to go. A couple of times, same thing with the pre-merge. Well, I mean, it's Ozzy, so they probably were not going to lose those challenges. But right when the mutiny happens and the bottle twist happens, Ozzy was probably the likely person to get voted out between Yul, Sundra, and Becky. They would have voted him out most likely. I think he was at the bottom at least. So I'm like, positioning not great. Strategically, he's questionable, but he's so good at challenges, and that's such an underrated part that like a lot of super fans just don't give the credit to. So like I would, if you guys are gonna go both S, it doesn't really matter. I was between A and B, which sounds crazy, but
okay.
I think like you can win a lot of challenges and set yourself up, and probably should win in some cases. Doesn't necessarily mean you're like strategically the greatest. And I think we've seen again, like Ozzy doesn't end up reprising. He doesn't have like a second. He has Redemption Island 2 seasons later with his third appearance. If it wasn't for that, he's probably just an early merge boot like Joe, because Cochran probably gets voted out, I guess, at that time, instead of sending Ozzy to Tribal or sending Ozzy to Redemption Island. Game Changers doesn't work out. Again, early merge boot. And then what's the early merge boot in Micronesia? He's basically Joe in some cases. It's just he's got that recognition with winning all the Redemption Island duels that make people love him. And Cook Islands, it's the same thing. I don't know, but I'm fine with S. I'm not too bothered.
Okay. Is that what you're thinking, Gideon? Are you with me on S?
I'm with you on S, dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
100%.
I also do think that I agree. It was like pre-merge. He did have some questionable moves that maybe put him on the, even though he was with the majority alliance, like it felt like he was kind of on the bottom, but it did feel like he found what he was good at and really stepped up towards the second half. So, there are players like Ryan, we were just talking in our Heroes Healers and Hustlers rewatch video, that I feel like had a great start and then kind of slowed down. I do sort of have the respect of players that kind of start off making questionable moves and figure it out as it goes on. I do know that Ozzy, I know he was a recruit and hadn't watched the show coming in. I think the rumors that he also didn't watch the reference seasons that you're supposed to. If you're a recruit, you're supposed to still watch like at least 2 seasons. I think the rumors he skipped those, so he literally had no idea how to play at all, and like kind of figured it out as it goes on. So I do give him some brownie points for that, but yeah.
Yeah, I wish he had tried to at least like flush the idol from Yul once they had the numbers, just to be like just as a safety blanket. Because if he goes to the final 3 with like Becky and Sundra, I don't know. It's that would elevate him in my eyes, because he was really setting himself up to potentially lose against Yul, and that's what happened. And I'm like, you gotta be like, Yul is Yul. Like everyone just looks at him, he's like, I mean, if it wasn't for Ozzy, he probably would have won a bunch of those challenges. And he's a smart guy, really likable. I'm surprised he actually, maybe it's a testament to Ozzy's game that it was 5-4, and Yul had to like finesse Penner and whoever to get their jury vote. What if Penner voted for Ozzy? I don't know if he would have. Probably wouldn't have. He probably would have voted for Yul anyway. Or Adam. Yeah, and Adam had to deal with him to vote out Penner first, and he'll vote for Yul in the end. So it's interesting. Like Yul's the godfather. I'm surprised Ozzy. I wish he had done a little more, I guess.
Yeah, I got you.
All the same.
Yep. Are Cassandra and Dreams both D? Do we even need to really talk about these guys, or do you guys think they're?
Yeah, I'd say they're both in my Ds. Yeah, I had them both in D tier. There's not a ton. I'm actually rewatching Fiji now. It's the one I'm currently catching up on, and I'm partially curious to see how I feel about these two by the end of it. But I don't have a lot to say with them. So
carried by Earl.
Yeah, I mean Earl and Yao. It's like that tag team. It was just either or. I guess I'm like, who wins between Dreams and Cassandra if it's a final 2? That's the one thing I'd be curious to find out.
I think Cassandra.
Because I don't know if they fully knew it was a final 3 yet. Because the surprise final 3, they were. I don't know if they knew, but
I don't think they did.
Cassandra. Yeah.
I don't think they did.
So
I was going to say Cassandra.
That was a plan. That was one of their plans to go to the end with each other. I don't know. It's never talked about, but
yeah.
I don't know.
So we have. Share my screen. So we have China with Courtney. If we're going like character and lovable player, as far as a runner-up or enjoyable to watch, for me, it would have to be in S or an A. But if we're talking about like how good of a runner-up they were based on their gameplay. I mean, she didn't really have. I guess she had an okay, even social game. It's like there was like maybe two people that really liked her, but everyone else, it seemed like she was on the outs with a lot of people. Had no challenge game. Was she really making any strategic moves? It's weird to put, because to me, Courtney is like a true legend of Survivor. Like if Courtney makes a legend season, I will not think twice about it. Like I would totally be cool with that. But was she a good, strong runner-up to Todd? And it's weird too, because you can also make the argument that without Todd's amazing, potentially the greatest final tribal council speech ever, Courtney may have been the person to win. So to me, because of that, you can't put her in a D. I'd probably put Courtney in a C. To me, when I look at like the people we put in C so far, which sort of has become sort of like the woman category, I guess. I hopefully we get some males in the C eventually. But when I look at like your Wigglesworths and your Lils and your Danielles, to me, Courtney kind of fits in with that mold. See people in the chat are saying C, but what are you guys thinking for Courts?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Courtney. Like,
yeah,
for a long time, she was probably my second favorite to ever play. Not for strategy so much, but for like what she brought. I'm such a fan of like irreverent humor, people who just don't give a shit about things that maybe should be more important. And in this case, for her, it was Survivor, and she just didn't take it seriously, and it was so different, so unique. It's like you don't get that. Everyone's on there, and it's. I would do the same. I would take it seriously and have fun with it, but she just didn't even care, and I kind of appreciated her sense of humor, even though it was a little cruel at times. I don't know if she's necessarily my top two now because of so much time has passed, but I still really like her. And like you said, if she came back, I almost wonder, like, if she didn't get voted out in Heroes Villains, does she take the Sandra spot and potentially end up winning instead of Sandra? And I would have loved to see that. That would have been fascinating. Yeah. I don't think she would have. I think she probably would have done the flip with JT and Amanda. But but in spite of her Heroes Villains game, yeah, I have a trouble figuring out strategically where Courtney's head is ever at, besides following what Todd and Amanda are doing. And I feel like a lot of the times she doesn't really do anything besides follow them and go with them. And she's like, I don't like this. And they're like, we don't care. I want to vote this person out. Well, we don't. Okay. And it's like, Courtney, I hate to say it, but I put Courtney in D. That's why I started out with saying how much I love Courtney, like top two favorite. I have her in D, and I was like, I don't know strategically where I could possibly look at her and think like she had any influence, any control, did anything. She won an immunity challenge. She did do that. John Robert did not do that. That's something to be considered. She sat there. She did nothing, and she won immunity. And in that immunity challenge, she didn't do nothing the whole game. But that one challenge, she sat there on top of the dragon, and she did nothing, and it was the best strategy possible. I don't know. I mean, I also included an F tier, so I had people in my F below her. So if she's like at the bottom, I can be happy with seeing her in C.
I was gonna say C, yeah.
I did go on Twitch earlier and asked my Twitch chat, and they all said they had her in B. I kept my mouth shut because I love Courtney, but I'm like, I don't know about. I put her in B, but
I think she's C. I mean, she did some stuff, but not a lot.
I mean, like, she went with the flow, and the flow
she did.
Her alliance.
She went with the flow, which sometimes works. Going with the flow sometimes works.
But also, like, she also didn't care that much, which is tricky. And I'm like, it's hard for me to give you props for not caring. It's funny, but strategically, it doesn't do you any good, and it kind of put her in like. But then, of course, by the end of it, Todd and Amanda were not very liked. I think if Courtney possibly votes Todd out, because he then won't have his great final tribal, it's possible we see Denise go on to. I think Courtney wins in a final three of Amanda and Denise. I could see it. I know it sounds crazy, but yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, as far as Amanda goes, yeah. I was gonna say same as Courtney.
D.
No. I was gonna say C. I was gonna say C for Amanda here. I don't know. What did she do different from Courtney other than care?
Oh, this is Micronesia, though.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, hey, Adam. Thanks for joining us.
Hey. Oh, yeah, we had Courtney.
No, I moved on to Amanda for you while you
Amanda?
were frozen in time. Yeah.
I wasn't. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah, my internet switched to my building Wi-Fi for some reason without asking me. Let me share my screen back with you. Okay. Amanda, I mean, I think Jeff Probst said it best in that, like, Amanda's so good at getting to the end, but it's like when she gets to the end, she just doesn't have that, like, that finisher mentality that, like, I made it and I just got that one final, that killer, like, pull out all the stops, go hard. Like, she's so soft and gentle at Final Tribal when you need to be the total opposite.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, did she only lose by one in Micronesia, or did she lose by two?
She
I
lost
always forget.
by two.
By two, okay.
I mean, it would have been a tie if one person switched, but
yeah, I mean, I think she played a good social game. I do feel like a lot of people, she put herself in a position where a lot of different people wanted to work with her before the tribe swap, after the tribe swap, after the merge. It just seemed like she was someone that, like, everyone, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people wanted to work with, including people that already were working with other people. It wasn't like she was just approached by the bottom of the numbers people. You know, she did work herself into the majority alliance. You can argue there's, you know, I know it's kind of commonplace that, like, Parvati formed the Black Widow Brigade. It's a little tricky when you watch it to pinpoint a moment when, like, that alliance actually formed or who was the one that formed. I'm not saying it was Amanda. I'm saying I don't think we'll ever truly know. To me, Amanda is probably either a high C or a low B. Did she win any immunities? I don't think she won any immunities. So she maybe wasn't the best at the challenge aspect, but I do think she. To me,
she did.
I might be. She did win one.
She did one. Well, she won the final. She voted out Sri.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. To me, yeah, she's either like a low B or a high C, because I'm looking at, like, Twila, and, like, I could see her being in Micronesia up there with, like, with the Twila. So I don't know. I'd probably say B, and maybe that's just because B is lacking the most. I mean S, but S is, you know, going to be the one that's for sure going to get the least people winning. I don't know. I'd say B for Amanda. Another thing too is you got to think that, like, Micronesia had a pretty tough. She had tough competition. You know, she had to overcome Sari, and she did. She had to overcome James and Ozzy and Penner and Fair Play, I guess, and Yao Man. Like, she overcame a lot of talented players, except one who might be the greatest female competitor of all time.
Right.
I'd say B. I'd say B for Amanda. A low B, but.
While you were off camera, I said C because I don't know. I don't like the whole playing the victim game, and I think she plays a victim-like game. I just don't respect it very much.
Okay.
You know, I feel like Amanda's one of the more consistent players, even though she doesn't win.
She's very consistent.
She's very consistent. I mean, like, had the numbers been in her favor in Heroes Villains, I could see her having a very similar outcome again for the third time. Don't know if she wins, but if the heroes went to the final five together, who knows? I wouldn't be surprised to see her sitting in the final three, probably losing again for a third time. I don't know. I'm actually okay with Amanda. I would have put her. I was fluctuating between B and A. As far as, because I just feel like she generally has a good read. Not always, but she always seemed. I can trust Amanda to basically get by in any episode, in any round, and I think that she's also quite good in the challenges. She did actually win the last two of the season, with the final four and the final three, and that's pretty clutch. I know that she did a couple of a slightly unique strategy. I've talked about it in my video, and yeah, I don't know. I've always found Amanda to be. It's just the one thing she really lacks is she just doesn't go for the jugular at the finals, final tribal. You know, like, she doesn't have that. When it says finish them, she doesn't. She puts the controller down, and it's like, oh, you just gotta clinch it. She doesn't have that, and she goes against Todd and Parvati, and they do. They're like two of the biggest. Like, they bite hard. They bark loud and they bite hard, and Amanda doesn't have that. So that's what you need at the last second. That's a huge gap in her game that maybe he puts her down. I could settle, like, if you want to go B and C, I'd probably settle for a B. So
I'm okay with a B. For me, she's like the highest C for me. I don't. Yeah, I'm okay with a B.
I'm going to ask Peridiam.
Adam, your audio's awful.
Is it
better?
Okay, yeah, that's better.
Better. I wanted to ask while we were on like this era, because one of my favorite videos of yours is like the top 5 Final Tribal Council performances. Who did you have higher? Did you have Todd or Chris higher? And is it still that same for you?
I had Todd higher. Yeah, I don't think it's changed since I made it. I know I made it a couple years ago. I haven't really gone into like re-exploring that, so I don't think it's probably changed at all. But I also had I don't know if you guys have seen Australian Survivor. I had one of the winners above Todd even.
Christy, right?
Yeah. I've rewatched hers partially because of the person she beats does a pretty bad job. So I was like, how bad was his? And hers is still just ridiculously. I think she even outpaces Todd. It's so good, her Final Tribal. And I've spoken to one of the jurors on that season and asked him specifically about that, and he was just like, she was phenomenal, and he wasn't that good. So, but yeah, I had Todd up there. I didn't have Parvati's up there though. I had Todd and Chris. So,
yeah, absolutely. Cool. Susie to me is a D for Gideon. I know Gabon is your thing, man.
No, I agree. Susie is a D. I don't look.
Gideon likes Gabon?
Yes, Gabon's awesome, but I don't like Gabon for the Susie or even the Bob. I just like it because overall, I'm not gonna sit here and talk good about. Yeah, put her in D. We don't need to talk about that.
Well, so I think Susie's an S. No, I'm kidding.
Shut up, bro. Oh my god.
I think it's crazy. I think one of the biggest blindsides in History Survivor is seeing Susie up 3-1 at the final tribal when Jeff's revealing the votes. I think that's one of my biggest blindsides. I've like, oh my god, Susie's gonna win. Like, when has this ever happened? They've gone 3-1 with the loser. I mean, I do think Susie doesn't get a lot of credit. I think she probably is more underrated if I had to say one or the other. She's definitely not overrated. She does win a couple of clutch immunities or nice immunities that probably would have resulted in her possibly getting. I think Sugar would have rather had Maddie and Bob in the final 3. So had Susie not won the final immunity challenge, I think there's a decent chance Susie gets voted out there. As crazy as that sounds, and would probably have Maddie as winning most likely, I guess. It's hard to say. Maybe not with the Onions. The Onions Alliance might have still given it to Bob there. I don't know. Yeah, it's probably not too much to say with Susie. There actually isn't really a lot to say with Susie. Like, she's not really shown that much. It's hard to give her a lot of credit when the show doesn't give her any screen time. So
yeah,
maybe yeah. I'm fine with D. Like, I could see an argument for C because of she was one vote away and she won some stuff, and I don't know. She did have some nice, like she made a good flip at the final 10 against Marcus, and so that was pretty good. Like that secured her some distance in the season.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm looking at Jonathan in the chat saying like, yeah, he highlights.
Good point. That, like, good point, Jonathan.
That's her resume. Like, that's basically her resume. It's her elevator pitch of why she could be underrated. I don't know.
She's still a D.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think the consensus is that she is a D, so I'm not gonna sit here and die on that hill.
Yeah, absolutely. Steven to me is the ultimate. Is he an S or is he an A? Because
really,
he was there. Yeah, he was there for every big move, and you can argue that he was there for all the big moves even more so than JT. It seemed like a lot of times it was. I know it was kind of presented even at Final Tribal by Steven himself as everything was mutual, but to me, it really seemed with the edit we got that as far as like who were they going to vote out, sometimes JT would even come with a name and Steven would be like, no, let's do this guy instead. And JT would always be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It seemed like when it came to, I mean, they were the duo. They were the guys in charge. You can throw Taj in there too.
Audio, Adam.
Yeah, you had an audio glitch.
It's kind of like an alliance within an alliance sort of thing. But man, JT, I think Fishbach just, if there was any to get,
Adam, audio.
still bad.
Yeah, it's going in and out.
Okay. I'm saying A for Fishbach. You guys take it away.
I was gonna say A as well.
I agree with Christian.
I was gonna say A. He did play a solid game. He didn't do himself any favors at the final, but I mean, really, Fishbach, I think he was ahead of his time. Yeah, I like how he plays. He's a great player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had him in A as well. So that's probably an easy bank that in the A. I like Fishbach too. Tocantins was the first season that really got me back into Survivor. I was heavily rooting for both him and JT. I was like, I can't lose regardless of the outcome. It felt great. I do think honestly, I think he gets underrated sometimes, to be honest. If I had to pick one or the other, I think he has a solid strategic mind and he's able to take control as an underdog going in. And I mean, if he had just won one challenge at the very end, I think maybe at the final four or the final three, he's probably a millionaire. So yeah. And he wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be talking about him if it wasn't just for one challenge. Just beat JT at that one challenge with the ball rolling down the ramps, and you got to catch it. If he just catches the ball and before JT, I think Steven wins and beats Aaron. So
that probably haunts him to this day.
Oh, it does. I mean, if you look at Cambodia, he's like having like flashbacks to like, I can't let the golden boy go far again. If I give him an opening, Joe is gonna take it. So he's like, we got to get Joe out now. We got to like throw a challenge to get Joe out or vote him out in the pre-merge before he gets a chance. And to be fair, like Joe wins a handful of challenges in that season, but yeah, he's like reliving it in his following season just because he's like, I let JT get too far and it bit me and it cost me the game. I'm like, yeah, it kind of did.
Yeah.
So.
So A, you guys think A as well, or?
Yeah, I think A.
Another guy potentially debating is he an S or an A. He's kind of in that same boat with Boston Rob. I know some fans consider Russell to be the most robbed, to be the greatest runner-up, to be the greatest who has never won. But is that a bitter jury, or is that his own doing? I mean, is Russell still Boston Rob? Was there a way for him to get to the end without being Russell? I think I took it a step further with the idol fines. You could argue, okay, they didn't have idols with Rob, but Rob, I don't know.
Yeah. Also, your audio's kind of sounds like you're a bit underwater, Adam. Yeah.
But to me, I mean, I'm going to say S for Russell, but
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad you were going to say that.
But I could 100% see the argument for A. What are you guys thinking?
I was going to say S. I mean, he played a good game. I do, in fact, believe that this was a bitter jury. I will die on that hill.
Is a bitter jury like a flaw? Is it like a bad part?
I do think in this sense the game was flawed a little bit.
Flawed.
I'm not gonna lie, man, because like, don't get me wrong, sometimes a bitter jury, like, they can be slightly bitter, I understand, but this time, man, nobody did anything else. Or at least, let me make the point, at least production should have gave Natalie a better edit. Can I say that?
I mean, yeah, or maybe both. Maybe Natalie did enough and she should have gotten a better edit.
I think I needed a better edit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for sure. I think that's a start to make. I mean, I actually like Samoa as a season itself. I think it's pretty fun to watch. Too. It almost feels cinematic in a weird way. Like Survivor doesn't always feel that, but there's a very strong like story or narrative from the beginning to the end, particularly with the Foas, and they get a lot of screen time. They sort of get built up as the heroes, the bad news bears. They're like the ragtag misfits, and they end up just demolishing the purple monster that is Galoo. And it's just weird, because like Russell is so front and center, and he doesn't win. I was devastated when I first watched that season, but way back in the day. I've talked about it on my channel, made a whole video about it. And I made a video about it with the intention to be like, but now 10 years later, let's actually look at what we like learned from this. And for me, I'm generously giving Russell an A. There is an argument to put him lower, and I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I get the S, and I will go with the S because you guys both said S, and I don't want to incur the wrath of Russell's fan base, wherever they are.
Yes, don't, because they're close to us.
They're out there, and they're rabid, and nobody in the history of Survivor has ever maintained a fan base. So
Russell is a dog, and that is a fact. He's a bulldog, that's for sure.
Right, and the issue is that, like, just like Rob in All Stars, which we talked about, and we brought Russell up at that time too earlier in this. Yeah, Russell doesn't fully understand what it takes to win Survivor, which is you can't just bulldoze.
He does now.
Be a bulldog. Yeah, I know. The problem is he didn't then, and that's what I'm
didn't then.
on.
So
like maybe if he played one more time, it might work out really well, and we'd be like,
here's
Russell.
the Survivor legends.
Yeah, hey, I'd say go for it. I've always liked Russell as a character, as a player. I've always thought he makes for great TV. I would love to see him come back. I've never really had a problem with him. I just think philosophically, when it comes to trying to understand how do you win this game, I just think his logic at the time, at least during his Samoa days and Heroes versus Villains days, is not how you win Survivor. And unfortunately, I think it adopted a lot of people's mentality is like, this is how you should win, and Russell is right. And I'm like, I actually don't think he's right because the proof is in the pudding. He didn't win. So it's clearly not how you win because it didn't work. It's just, I can't blame like the game when I don't think, like even Edge of Extinction, I don't blame Edge. It's just a slightly different game. It's not a game I like. It's like when I'm playing a video game and they release a patch or a buff or an expansion or whatever, they nerf things, and I'm like, the game sucks more, but it's still kind of like, okay, you're winning on a different meta or whatever. I don't know. I play a lot of video games, so maybe this makes no sense. But for me, I'm like, Edge was like, right, I was like, maybe, yeah. And I'm like, so maybe the Edge to me was like an expansion pack that made the game overall weaker. And so winning at that level isn't the same as winning as it used to be. But I'm like, in Russell's case, I don't think that a bitter jury is, I think it's just a byproduct mostly of the players on the season. I think at the end of the day, they're all people. People have emotions. You know, there's a reason they've reacted to something. And I don't think they went in like, it's telling to me that Russell lost. He only got 2 out of 18 jury votes. Like, that is incredibly telling. And there were 18 strangers. None of them knew him. Like, there's a common denominator. And it's hard for me to ignore that when it comes to, like, you need to get a majority or a plurality, depending on the final 3, to win. And it's hard to overlook. The win condition is you need the votes. He couldn't get them, and it's because of his misunderstanding of what it takes to win people over. So, anyway, but I'm like, you know what? To get to the end, that's a huge accomplishment. To do it twice is a huge accomplishment, and I don't want to sell him short. He can win challenges. He's got a strategic knack. He knows how to work the numbers. He knows how to get in with the right people to get those numbers. That's very impressive. A lot of people can't do that, and I think he gets overrated by casuals and underrated by hardcore fans. So for me, sort of somewhere in the middle, and
Okay.
But I'm cool with S. I'm cool with
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
at the end of the day.
Yeah. All right, moving on to Parvati. This is going to be our last one, by the way. We're doing this in 2 parts because I have finals. And
yeah, I thought we would. I'm like, this is going to go for a long time.
I did not know. I thought we might be able to rip through this, but I'm glad we've had in-depth conversations about them because this has been really great. But Parv, for me, S should have won the game. Next.
I will say, when I spoke to my Twitch chat earlier today, it was the most unanimous S I had seen.
She should be
literally all 40 of them. All 40,
she should be a 2-time winner. And I feel like I always feel like I'm such like the casual when I talk to Survivor, like, you know, commentators like Adam and you, because like I'm always like, oh, I actually don't mind, you know, Redemption Island, and like Bustin' Rub's a good player, blah 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 blah. And Gabon's good, blah blah blah. But Parvati should be a 2-time winner.
I would probably say Gabon might be in my top 10, as crazy as that sounds. So I'm with you.
Good. Rap has it literally rated at 7. If you watch Rap literally.
What?
Rob himself. Rob has put out his own rankings. Like himself, he has Gabon very high. So
Bob Crowley paid him off for that. It's very
Bob
clear.
Bob Crowley. What did Bob Crowley pay him off with? His corn that he owns or something? I don't.
Wait, that dude. Rob Cesternino has Gabon in his top 10 favorite seasons?
He does. I know for a fact Gabon was in his top 10. Yeah, I was like, whoa, Robert. Anyways, so
that's an evolution of Rob's opinions. I think back in the day, he used to hate Gabon.
Yeah,
used to be like, what is
somebody
their-
commented his top like his personal rankings, and he had Gabon very high.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I know that his fan base didn't have it very high in their overall rankings, and I've honestly disagreed with a lot of his fan base with his rankings he's doing. But still, at the end of the day, it's all subjective. So whatever.
Well, everybody in the chat agrees it's an S. Peridiam, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. I'm a huge Palau
right.
fan. I mean, my channel was largely inspired by my adoration for Parvati.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was my logo. My logo was a little nod to her. It was the queen chess piece and then the letter P, which is Peridiam, or Queen P. So yeah, but I mean, I know there's a case to be made for people who say like Parvati could be less than an S, but I'm totally fine with putting her an S. I'm happy to do it. So
She should have won the game. I'll say it. I'll say it
Bow
here.
at the
I'll
shrine.
say it now. And Adam his headphones are dying, but can you muster out anything for us, Adam?
S.
Okay, yeah,
All right.
that was awful. Okay, yeah.
say
sounds good.
less.
All right, guys. Well, when we do part 2, we'll link that there. Peridiam, thank you so much for joining us, man. You are a mind unlike any other, and we love you here, and we love your content.
Love you guys
we can't
too.
Wait.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having me. Appreciate it. This
Of
was
course.
fun.
It's been awesome. Thank you guys for watching, and check us out next week for part 2 when we have another special guest on, Charlie D'Amelio.